All right, welcome back to photosynthesis. So you should have done two gizmos. The first one just being about photosynthesis and the plant with different light and changing the different like changing the different variables to see how it gives off carbon dioxide or when it gives off the best or most carbon dioxide. And then the next one was the plant and the snail gizmo, which was this one where you had test tubes and you got to kind of create your own experiment and see when the plant would give off carbon dioxide, when it would give off oxygen, what is the snail doing, and how is that related. So if we had the water plant in light with that blue solution, the BTB, remember blue means that it has oxygen. And if it's this yellow green, it has carbon dioxide. So in the light, the plant and oxygen, so up here on the upper left, stayed blue because it was still giving off oxygen and it was not giving off enough or maybe not at all carbon dioxide. And then here on the right-hand side, the blue solution was in carbon dioxide, so it was like a green or yellow. So like they blew bubbles into it, then they put the plant into it, and they wanted to see what would happen. Well, hopefully you learned that plants give off oxygen, so it turned the solution blue. And this was in light. So then if we had it in the dark and we had the same situation where there was a plant and we put it in oxygen solution, it turned yellow or green to give off that carbon dioxide. And then if it already had carbon dioxide, it stayed like that. So it was not producing oxygen or enough oxygen to change colors anyway. So let's summarize the meaning of our results then. So does our data allow us to answer all the questions that we had about plants? So in our lab notebooks, we wrote down how do plants use oxygen, why are plants green and other colors, and do they only give off carbon dioxide? So yes, we were allowed or we answered some of those questions already. So we're going to write down in box C on page 79 some of our notes. Okay, so we are on page 79. This is box C. So what did we find out about these two gizmo labs? So we have found out that plants use carbon dioxide in sunlight. To complete photosynthesis. There you go. So if you think about photosynthesis, photo meaning light, so carbon dioxide needs to, or will be created when there is light to complete photosynthesis. And during this process, they release oxygen. And just remember the CO2 is carbon dioxide. All right, so then we looked at the difference between in the light and in the dark. So in the dark, when there is no sunlight, plants give off carbon dioxide because they still go through cellular respiration. So we learned that last unit that all living things go through cellular respiration. And then we're going to take a look at two other experiments that have been done, and then we're going to explain their results. So before we do that, there's a discussion question posted on Google Classroom, so make sure to answer that. And it's another four corners question like we started off with. So in your discussion question, you're going to answer the discussion question and then pick, this time you'll probably pick two people to either agree or disagree with and explain why. So an unresolved question that we have is, do plants do respiration all the time or just at night? So we do know that in the dark, plants give off carbon dioxide, but do they do this also when there's light? Because we know when there's light, they go through photosynthesis. So we're going to look at two experiments, and you guys have some questions to answer on this as well. So in experiment one, there are three chambers with different parts of the plant in them. So you can think of these like containers being like clear glass containers. So one had the whole plant with leaves and everything, roots, stems, leaves, the whole thing. The one in the middle only had the stem of the plant. It was alive, so that's why they said green stem only, so it is living. And then the third one is roots only, so it doesn't have any of the stem. So what they did was they measured the carbon dioxide in each of these circular chambers over 24 hours, so day and night, beginning at midnight, and exposed them to a normal amount of daylight. So here are the results. It is measured in concentration of carbon dioxide in the chamber throughout the experiment. So here's the concentration of carbon dioxide in the chamber on your y-axis, and time of day on the bottom, or the x-axis. So in the blue here is the root system, so just the roots, and it's measuring carbon dioxide. So it looked like the carbon dioxide was slowly increasing. Then we have the stem, and again, remember it started at midnight, and then this is through a day, and then nighttime again. So here's just the stem, no leaves. The carbon dioxide was increasing, and then it decreased, and then it started increasing again. And then the leaf system, so like those green leaves, the whole plant really is the green one. So it started increasing carbon dioxide again, then decreasing and increasing again. So what happens to the concentration of carbon dioxide in each of the chambers throughout the day? And then I want you to explain why you think this is happening. So this is on that Google document attached to these notes that I want you to turn in. And then here's experiment 2, where they put the whole plant in different light intensities for 24 hours. So instead of the light changing, they just kept it in the light to see what was going to go on. So what do you think will happen to the carbon dioxide levels in each chamber after 24 hours? Oh, so the level of light intensity across the experiment. This one had the highest amount of light on the left. This one had low light, and then the one on the right had no light at all. And again, the light intensity is measured throughout the day. So this one at the end had no access to light. In the middle, it kind of had some shade, and then the one on the left had full access to light. So here's the chart that they got, and then the graph. And again, you're going to explain what happened in each chamber and what these results indicate. So on that Google Doc that's attached to these notes, but I'll go through it also to help you figure out what it's saying. So the light level, there was normal, so that's this one. Low, that's the one in the shade. And then dark would be no access to light. So they all started with the same amount of carbon dioxide, which was a measurement in parts per million, but you can just think of it as a normal number of 410. And then 24 hours later, they measured how much carbon dioxide was present, and that's listed here. And then the change, so how much carbon dioxide was either gained or lost throughout the 24 hours. So the net change for normal light, it went down. Low light, it also went down, but there was still, or no, sorry, it didn't go down. It went from 410 to 417. So the net change was positive. So it increased 7 parts per million. And then in the dark, it also increased. So, and then here's a graph of that showing in just a different way. So be sure to answer then those questions on your Google Doc. So what do experiments 1 and 2 tell us about the timing of cellular respiration in plants? So basically the question is, does cellular respiration occur all the time? Does it occur only in the light, only in the dark, only in the day, only at night? Are the options. Hopefully from all these experiments, you found out that what do these 2 additional experiments tell us? That cellular respiration does occur all the time. And it occurs in both the light and the dark. So cellular respiration does not depend on light. It can happen at all times. But then how does that explain the fact that there was still a change in the BTB solution? So when it turned from when it turned from yellow, meaning that there was carbon dioxide, into the blue, which meant there was oxygen. Because through cellular respiration, remember, we breathe out carbon dioxide. So how does that explain that difference? This is what I was talking about. It's more of a visual explanation. So cellular respiration is happening all the time. How can you explain the results we got with our plant in the light? So remember, when it's blue, it has oxygen. So here we have a plant in the light and it stayed blue. But when it had carbon dioxide, it went back to blue, so released oxygen. So if we're saying that cellular respiration is happening all the time, why didn't this one change to the yellow or green? Because in cellular respiration, we breathe out carbon dioxide. So that must mean that something is happening with this light. Remember what I said, what photosynthesis is? Photosynthesis needs photo or light to happen. So with the light, photosynthesis must be occurring. So then if we conclude this, that means that both respiration and photosynthesis happen in light. But photosynthesis happens faster, or it occurs at a faster rate. Because remember, cellular respiration is broken up into those steps. Photosynthesis is a single step that happens faster in light. Therefore, so that means carbon dioxide is being used faster than it's being produced. All right, so our next part is kind of how is this related to energy? Because we keep talking about matter and energy and comparing it to cellular respiration. All right, so where do these two processes happen in organisms? Remember, cellular respiration happens in the mitochondria, or the powerhouse of the cell. So those are those little, like, oh, they look kind of like little worms or bugs, but it's the mitochondria. This is a cell. And so respiration happens in mitochondria. And then photosynthesis happens in chloroplasts. So they put in these green circles, and these are only in plant cells. They are actually not in animal cells. So we as humans do not have chloroplasts. Cats, dogs, they do not have chloroplasts. It is only in plant cells. Okay, so we're going back to our chemical reactions diagram. We figured out or put in that diagram A, this top diagram, applies to the reactions of cellular respiration. So remember, we, or anything that goes through cellular respiration, also plants, but we'll think about us, taking glucose, sugars, and oxygen. That's our input. We take in food, we breathe in oxygen, and then as an output, or why we need food, is to create energy. So it gives off energy, and then we release or breathe out carbon dioxide, and we release water through sweat, pee, anything, water vapor, all that. And the energy made is ATP. So that should be a review. So based on what we observed in lab and what we've been doing, which energy diagram would apply to photosynthesis? Would it be diagram A, the top one, like cellular respiration, or would it be the bottom one, where the products need energy? You need energy into the system. Which one do you think photosynthesis is? So photosynthesis actually is the bottom reaction. So remember, light is an energy type. We went over the different kinds of energy a long time ago. So we input light and carbon dioxide. We know that plants take in carbon dioxide and light. They also need water. And then they create, remember, they give off oxygen and that glucose. Remember, they produce that sugar or their food for themselves, because plants don't need to be fed anything. Like, yes, they need water, but you don't like give them food. They create their own sugars and food for themselves. So we'll write down this equation in box 8. Well, sorry, it's actually G and H. We'll do it together. I do want to show you something, though. It's not in our notes, actually, because I forgot to put it in. But it should be a review. So if you look at this, this is not in our book, this is an old book, but here we have the energy diagram for cellular respiration, and it's just what I went through. And if you look, this one is the energy diagram for photosynthesis. It's just the opposite. So it's like flipping it the other way. So we're going to write down this one and then the balanced chemical equation. All right, so we are on page 80 now. So we have our energy diagram. This one I didn't put in, so you do need to draw in your graph. It's energy over time, like always. Okay, so what type of energy do we put in? We put in light energy. Remember, this is a plant photosynthesis. So light energy gets put into the system. It starts, or what plants need or take in, is carbon dioxide and water. And then it creates that glucose and oxygen for us to breathe. Those are the outputs. Something to note is that our outputs from photosynthesis have a lot of potential energy. They're super high up on this energy diagram. So the light energy does give out or create more energy. Like, you put in a lot of energy so that these have a lot of potential energy, stored energy. And then we need to balance the equation. So this is the balanced equation of photosynthesis. And then we're going to write out what all of these mean. So remember, it's carbon dioxide plus water gives off or creates glucose and oxygen. So overall, if we think about photosynthesis versus cellular respiration, what are some similarities between photosynthesis and cellular respiration? So we know that they both work in the light. We don't need light to breathe, but photosynthesis does. So they both do occur in the light. What else do we know? We know that photosynthesis, I went through this when I showed you the two energy diagrams, is the reverse of cellular respiration. So the products of photosynthesis are actually the reactants of cellular respiration, and it can go back and forth. So I want to write those out for you so that you can see the difference. So we're going to write out cellular respiration has the C6H12O6 or glucose. We breathe in oxygen. We create ATP, carbon dioxide, and water. And then photosynthesis is the opposite, where it takes in carbon dioxide and water with light to create glucose and oxygen. So we figured out in general, over the course of a day, photosynthesis is happening more and quicker than cellular respiration in a plant. So what is that overall effect on the environment? What would it do to the carbon dioxide levels? Hopefully bring it down. What about the oxygen levels? Those would hopefully go up. But this also means that it must make more glucose than it needs for cellular respiration because it's doing more photosynthesis. So what do you think happens to all the extra glucose a plant makes beyond what it needs to create ATP or energy? What does that extra glucose do, or where does it go? Why make extra? So if we go back to that question about the acorn turning into the oak tree, acorns weigh 1 to 2 ounces, and they can grow into a oak tree weighing as much as 3 to 4 tons, 6,000 to 8,000 pounds. And we know that acorns contain enough stored food for the little plant to sprout from, remember, A to B. But how does that tiny sprout grow into a gigantic tree? Where does that matter come from? I'm going to ask you this again, and you're going to answer it in a discussion question again. And you're going to think about now all the glucose that is made. So hopefully we've realized that it doesn't come from the dirt. As you can see here, there was an experiment, and they concluded that they started with like a 5-pound willow sapling, which a willow is a tree. They added in 200 pounds of dirt, and day one, they put it all together. 5 years later, the plant grew. They separated the plant and the dirt again, and the plant had a 3,400% increase in weight because it went up to 169 pounds, and the dirt only lost 0.00063% decrease. So that is not a significant amount, and it could actually be considered like insignificant where it doesn't actually matter, statistically speaking. So based on this result, he concluded that the mass of the tree does not come from the soil. So then he thought it must be the water. So if water evaporates from the leaf surfaces and it travels throughout a plant and gets absorbed in the roots, what he did was put a bag over the top of the tree or the plant to collect all that water. But later experiments measured that the amount of water taken in by a plant compared to the amount released in transpiration, which is just how plants get rid of their water, the difference was not nearly enough to account for that huge increase of the tree. So where did the rest of the mass come from? So we're going to write all that down, and hopefully you were able to answer where the matter came from the tree, but we'll write it all out right now. So where does the potential energy in glucose come from? Remember, light energy is what goes in. All right, so if we go through the process, all cellular energy, ATP, comes from glucose. Remember, cellular respiration is when we need energy. So by breaking down glucose, you release energy. That's through cellular respiration. This glucose is made during photosynthesis from the energy from the sun. Therefore, all energy for life originally comes from the sun because it creates the energy for glucose. So what are the important things that we have learned? Try to get this all to fit here. So we learned that plants take in low energy molecules. So if you go back to the top, These molecules, carbon dioxide and water, are the inputs, and they're low on the graph. So they have low energy. All right, there you are. I'll read this. So like I said, the plants take in the low energy molecules, carbon dioxide and water, and use that energy, or they need to take in energy from the sun in order to rearrange or transform the carbon dioxide and water into glucose and oxygen. These reactions together, these molecules being transformed, create or form the process of photosynthesis. And what else have we learned? We talked about that 24-hour period. All right, so our next bullet point was over the 24-hour period, the rate of photosynthesis is greater than the rate of cellular respiration, which means plants use or take in more carbon dioxide than they give off, and plants give off or produce more oxygen than they use. By creating more oxygen, that means that they also create more glucose, which is where the biomass from the growing plant goes. So if we conclude the last two units, so photosynthesis and cellular respiration, we're going to summarize the relationship from a seed to a tree, so growing, getting mass, and then the biggest loser of the man losing mass. So we're going to start with the mass that was lost, so the biggest loser. So whether you're gaining mass or losing mass, it's all from the molecule carbon dioxide. That's what it all can be broken down to. We know this because the seed takes in the carbon dioxide it rearranges it with the help of water and the sun. And creates glucose food for the plant and also releases oxygen for us and anything else to breathe. Whereas people, or anything else really, take in oxygen and glucose So people take in oxygen and glucose, which is rearranged with the help of ATP or created energy, ATP, into carbon dioxide and water. But remember, humans need water to live, so the water we get rid of, we have to take in. And so the mass is actually lost as carbon dioxide.